Welcome everyone to my new podcast with me, Dan from Adventure More UK. Catch on the flip side. Now, firstly, I just want to say the reason why it's called Catch on the Flip Side is, as most people know, I was in the military for 8 years, and one of my best friends who sadly passed away during my time in the military, that was actually his last words that he said to me before he left and passed away. So I thought it was kind of fitting for him to be involved in my future, my future projects, etc. So that's why that is. Now, my first guest today, an absolute legend, absolute master of the beard game, is an endurance athlete, is an adventurer. The man is Mr. Sean Conway. How are you, my friend?
I've been outbearded. I've been outbearded. That never happens.
Well, like I said before, it's been something I've been growing for quite a while. I get a lot of questions, people asking me, like, "Oh, you've been growing it for a long time, etc." But I feel like it's probably the same situation with you. I didn't necessarily go out to grow it. It literally, I started off with a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow, got a bit longer and a bit longer, a bit longer, and I've kind of just gone with it. Um,
Yeah,
it's kind of cool. Obviously, as you can, I've got no hair on my head, so I might as well turn my head upside down and
might as well make the most of
I've
it.
got yeah, might as well. Might as well. No, so for people that don't know, you actually were born in Zimbabwe, weren't you?
I was born in Zimbabwe to English and Irish sort of families. Dad's side's Irish, mum's side's English, and
Okay.
yes, spent my childhood in Africa, which was pretty phenomenal way to grow up, to be honest. And moved to South Africa when we were quite young,
Okay.
and yeah, then eventually. Oh gosh, it happened. It was like 2 weeks ago. I've now lived in the UK longer than I lived in South Africa. So,
Oh,
but not longer than I lived in Africa. So that
oh, okay.
date's coming up. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
cool. Well,
yeah.
yeah, because I spent a bit of time. I've looked at Zimbabwe from across the pond in across the Zambezi in
Oh,
Zambia.
yeah.
About
Okay.
5 6 years ago, I spent a bit of time in Zambia. So I've seen Zimbabwe near where Devil Falls is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Nice.
so it's not yeah, it is Devil Falls, up where Victoria National Park is.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
spent a bit of time there. Um, Obviously, for some people that don't know, you grew up basically with a game ranger father, didn't you? A great, so adventure was pretty much on. It was pretty inevitable, really, like for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was unlikely I was going to have a desk job, really. Dad is a rhino conservationist, so,
Mm.
in the early days, that was getting on horseback and, patrolling fence lines and, managing anti poaching units, ground units, and that sort of thing. Now it's a lot more advanced. It's drones and things like that, right? So, but yeah, growing up, it was living in the middle of the bush, no electricity. Well, we had electricity, but we had like 2 hours in the morning and then 4 hours in the evening
Yeah,
of electricity, and then the rest of the time, it's just living with candles, that sort of thing.
yeah, wow,
And that's when the generator worked, So.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but that was just normal for us. Like, which I didn't know any different. It's just like, oh, well,
No,
what's
exactly.
radio and TV wasn't a thing.
No, exactly, exactly. I know, for instance, when I was in Australia a couple of years ago, a friend of mine, he did the same. You're talking about technology and stuff like that. He actually was a qualified pilot, and obviously out there they have um, ranches bigger than Wales, you know, just in the middle of the Northern Territory. So he used to just instead of using a quad bike or etc., he used to just use a helicopter, which is just unbelievable. It's you know,
Yeah,
I,
no,
I,
we used to we didn't get around in airplanes and helicopters, but certainly some of the remote bush camps where there was anti-poaching units stationed. Yeah, jumping in a helicopter and going to one of those is what my dad used to do, and also when you had to go when you heard a gunshot at night. Usually, when it's full moon, a lot of poachers poach at full moon, so they don't need head torches and things. You hear a gunshot, and then first light, you in the helicopter going to have a look. And once or twice I would get to go in the helicopter with my dad when I was a kid, and that was great. Going in a helicopter, wearing the headphones, and it was just experiences I didn't know until now that I've got a child, got a son, that it was just shaped my life really.
Yeah, exactly. So as I say, I've obviously spent a lot of time in the military myself. A lot of my time I spent in around helicopters, probably a little bit different, but
Yeah.
it's quite an experience. It's a bit better than a roller coaster, I would say. But
Yeah.
yeah, I quite enjoy it. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, obviously when we talk about you coming from Zimbabwe, you moved here, I believe, in 2002. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, 11th of February 2002. Yeah,
Wow.
I
Yeah,
remember it well. It was
yeah.
cold and wet.
Yeah, it's not much different now, to be honest with you. It's still the same. It doesn't seem to change much.
Yeah.
Now, when you came over here, obviously you spent a lot of time being adventurous in Zimbabwe and in South Africa, as you say. Now, did you find it a bit difficult to sort of adapt to coming over to the UK, really? Because you spent a lot of time around London and is it Cambridge area?
Yeah, so when to sort of afford my flight ticket here, I pretty much sold everything I had in South Africa. I had a little tiny car, and bicycle, and I can't remember. But basically, I sold everything just to afford the plane ticket. And on top of that, I had £100 left over. So I came to the UK pretty much with £100 in my wallet. Landed up in a cabbage factory, or salad factory, cutting cabbages and lettuces for your pre-mixed salads you buy in the supermarket. So I was just
Yeah,
in a long
yeah,
conveyor belt factory, and it was you're traveling. I was 20 years old. It just was part of the fun, right? I did that
yeah,
to save enough money to move to London to pursue my sort of career in photography, which was what I was really interested in. And then you said, did I find it difficult? Not really, because in my headspace, I was traveling. And this was going to be my gap year of traveling after university. But, I didn't have any money to have a proper travel year. So it was more just like a working year, like let's go work abroad for a couple of years. So you just do whatever, and you put it in the sort of life experience. Well, this is just traveling box of life, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I
It's
think
kind of
had
like
I
a.
moved,
Oh, go on, sorry.
I was gonna say, had I moved here with the intention of just going straight into starting a real life and a new life,
Mm.
probably would have found that quite difficult.
Yeah,
Mainly only because of the temperature change. When you grow up when it's 35 degrees, all the time, to all of a sudden being
yeah,
cold and rainy, I would have found that hard, I think.
yeah. No, definitely. Like obviously, it's kind of like it's a means to an end, isn't it? Like obviously, as a lot of people in the adventures sort of world or traveling world will understand that you've got to basically you have to work hard to make your money. Money, like I think, there's a quote from yourself is if you ask, you're never going to get £1 million from one person, but you might get £1 from 1 million people. I think was that
Yeah, well,
something you said
that
a long
was
time ago?
John Paul. Yeah, John
Yeah,
Paul Getty. He famously said that, and yeah, with any big project, any big ideas, whether it's starting your own business, doing a startup,
mhm,
trying to get into sport, an endurance sport, to pull off a big expedition, you're going to have to rely on the kindness of other companies to sort of get you funding and that sort of thing, and get sponsorship, and then maybe sell a few books at the end of it. So, like in any sport, when you're working your way up the food chain, it's tough in any sport. Even Olympians who
mm,
aren't in the main traditional sort of popular events, as I
yeah,
say it, as it were, even they're struggling for funding now, and they're Olympic. I know Olympic gold medalists in sort of some other. I hate to say sideline sports, because all sports I think are
yeah,
equal, but let's say some of the ones that don't get as much airtime as they should. they're really struggling. And it's just for me, it's baffling. Like you're an Olympic gold medalist. This
Yeah,
is you
yeah,
should be.
yeah.
But
You
yeah,
think,
it is. Sport relies almost entirely on some form of sponsorship, whether it's national lottery, UK sport, or private companies helping people. And all sports people can't thank those companies enough, and organizations, and for helping anyone get into sport, really.
yeah, exactly. Now that kind of brings me on to onto your first adventure. Now, I believe your first adventure was your cycling Britain for your Land's End John O'Groats, or Land's
It
Start as we
was.
call it.
Yeah.
Um,
My
uh,
Lance start.
Land's Start. Now, obviously, you
John
went.
O'End.
Yeah, exactly. And you obviously started that with no experience, no money, as you say, and you didn't actually have a bike really until, was it a number of weeks before you started?
Yeah. So originally, I actually wanted to walk it because I
Okay.
had some time off. I had a month off. And well, firstly, I just wanted to go away for a month because in photography, it's pretty quiet in the winter time. So usually my business partner and I used to take a month off at different times of the year. And April was sort of my time because April was my birthday and
Mm.
birthday month. And yeah, so I thought, well, what can I do in a month that would be fun? And I was looking at, going to Nepal and all these other places and for a whole month. And I was like, oh, I can't quite afford that. And I just spent a lot of money the year before going to Tibet and Nepal and India anyway, and so I really knew how expensive going abroad was going to be. I spent all my budget that year,
Yeah.
so I think I had. I want to say about £800 maybe that I'd
Mm.
saved to go away for a whole month, and
Yeah.
so if I flew anywhere and needed accommodation anywhere, that budget's not going to last a month, right? And at
No,
the
no,
same
not.
time, my flatmate was like, "Oh, have you been to the Peak District?" And I said, "No." And have you been to the Lake District? No. Have you been to Scotland? Edinburgh? Does that count? And it became acutely, obvious that I had not really explored the island I lived on, and
Yeah.
so I thought, well, maybe I could walk Land's End to John O'Groats. And then I looked at the reality of 900 miles to try and do that in a month is 30 miles a day and carrying
Yeah.
a pack. I was like, yeah, I'm not fit enough. So why
Yeah.
don't I instead spend a month cycling it? And
Yeah.
and that was about a month maybe before I left. I went on eBay, bought a bike that was way too big for me.
Mm.
I'm a size 52 frame, really, which is tiny. I'm really short,
Yeah.
and I bought a 62 frame bike, which
Yeah.
is like extra large.
That's not ideal.
So my handlebars, I was like, could almost barely reach each end of the handlebars. I was cycling along, looking like an idiot, but I didn't know
Well,
any different, so
yeah.
it's great.
No, like, so as you say, it took you a month. Obviously with no experience. Like, don't get me wrong, that is good. I've done some cycling in the past. Now, my cycling experience is probably a lot different now. James Ketchell?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
James,
So
very well.
I
Yeah,
did a little bit of cycling with him when he circumnavigated our great country. He came up past
yeah,
where I live in the north of England, and
great,
I joined him for about 35 miles or so on my
amazing.
really inexpensive bog standard bike. Probably too big or too small. Like, I'm not a cyclist. It was just something I found nice and cheap. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like, there's a few things I'll talk about later in a bit, but like, what kind of mileage were you covering in sort of per day in that time?
Oh gosh, like I think 50 miles was a big day for me.
Yeah,
It's such a heavy setup. I remember once going down a dual carriageway the wrong direction, so I went the wrong way down a dual
wow.
carriageway, and so I had to cross over the middle barriers, and
Yeah, yeah,
I couldn't even lift my bike up, so I had to take
really.
all the panniers off,
Yeah,
lift the bike over, put the panniers over, and then put all the panniers back on because the bike was just way
wow.
too heavy. So
Yeah,
yeah, I want to say 50 kgs, but maybe it was more like
oh,
40.
wow.
But that's heavy. Considering when I went around the world, I had a all-in 15 kgs. So bike, panniers, food,
Yeah,
water,
yeah,
clothing,
That's
So
crazy. Again, it's just learning from experience, really, isn't it? And just giving it a go. I,
yeah, and also back then, 2008.
mm,
There was no smartphones, so I had paper versions of everything. I had a
really?
paper road map book. I had a paper, a whole Great Britain Lonely Planet book. I had a camping guidebook, and I actually had a book that I was reading, an actual paper book. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
like one of my panniers was 3 kgs just of paper.
That's yeah. For me, as I say, cycling is not something I'm quite good at. I would say I'm more on the swimming side of it, but that's something obviously we'll talk about in a minute. Now, after you cycle in Britain, obviously it took you a month to do that. Bearing in mind at the time, the I think it still is the record is about 40. Is it 41 hours or something like that? That's crazy.
For cycling, it is now
Cycling, sorry.
41
Yeah,
hours. Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was 44 hours.
yeah.
And yeah, it's now 41 hours, which is phenomenal.
It is. That's pretty good. Now, after that, is it after that you went to Kilimanjaro?
Gosh, I forget the dates now. Yeah, I think so. I think what the cycle did for me was made me realize I wasn't spending enough time challenging myself physically.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so I kind of got this bug then to just do, just challenge myself. So, doing the cheese rolling
yeah,
in
yeah,
Gloucester, and then climbing Kilimanjaro dressed as a penguin to raise money
yeah,
for
yeah,
charity, you know. And I think that was definitely the start of it all, really. The sort of, I think I need, well, I now know I need, but then I was sort of toying with this concept of I need physical goals in my life to lead a healthier, happier. Not I hate throwing the word happy out there. I think
yeah,
putting happiness as a concept on a pedestal is not a good idea.
yeah,
But just
yeah,
feeling more fulfilled, I think, is
yeah. No,
certainly
that,
important for me.
uh, yeah. There's a saying. It's a quote from there's a old South African uh, rugby player, Joos van der Vesterhuizen. Do you remember him?
Just yeah,
Yeah,
rest in
yeah,
peace. What a guy.
yeah,
He was
yeah.
my hero growing up,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. I unfortunately never got to meet him, but I know I've done a lot of work with a charity of someone who's he's one of his good friends from that team back in '95 uh,
Mm,
through the rugby sort of side of it because I'm big into rugby. And I think his saying was, "Life is not measured by time lived; it's measured by memories created," or something along those lines, which I think is
yeah,
a great quote. Um, Now, obviously, uh, with you saying about you mentioned it just before about your cheese rolling. Now, I know you've talked about this before in previous interviews and stuff or podcasts about you. Obviously, you probably done quite some significant damage into your shoulder, but again, it's an experience, isn't it? I believe you say it's the best 23 seconds of your life.
it was phenomenal, and
Yeah,
ah, and that hill, if anyone's been to the cheese rolling hill in Gloucester, it is a million times steeper than you think it is. You genuinely can't even walk down it. You're just
really.
sliding. It's almost like a slide. And oh yeah, I came second. It's gutted.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I
Did
know you will.
did
I'm
you?
actually looking as we speak. In fact, I'm gonna grab it. Hold on. Take it off the wall. Yeah, just literally there it is. That is
Oh, that's awesome.
my Cooper's Hill cheese rolling and weight 2009. I came second in the downhill race. It's
That's amazing.
framed, the certificate on my wall here in my office. I'm probably most proud of that certificate out of anything.
I know, like I've seen some footage from people doing that over the years. Like obviously, for people who don't know, it's like 200 over 200 years old. The tradition, isn't it?
Yeah, so originally I believe it was sort of, I think you used to wrestle the cheese at the bottom as well, I think.
Oh, really?
Because no one beats the cheese, because the cheese, by the time the cheese got to the bottom, it's doing 70 miles an
Yeah, yeah,
hour. And yeah, so I think it was sort of if you won that, if you got the cheese, you were sort of, you were the king of Gloucester or whatever.
yeah.
You could, all of a sudden you were a very attractive male for all the ladies in town, apparently.
This was pre-beard as well.
This is pre-beard. This is when I still had my full-time career as a school portrait photographer,
Yeah, yeah.
and beards and yeah, weren't a thing back for me yet. Anyway.
No, exactly. That's something that comes later on. Now, in the February, I think, believe in 2012, that's when you started your cycle around the world, wasn't it? That was a big
Yes.
challenge. Now,
Yeah. So that was the beginning of my new life, as I call it.
yeah, that was kind of like the thing that I believe myself would say would set you on the map of a you know a, an adventurer, I'd say, an endurance athlete.
Um, yes and no.
Mm.
Many people have cycled around the world and not
Yeah.
chosen to kind of go and become an adventurer. I'd say in inverted commas.
Mm.
Um, doing the world record, which is what I was attempting in 2012, somewhat puts you in that category. But then there was 9 of us in that race, and I'm the only one currently now who's gone on to do other types of adventure challenges.
Yeah.
Mark Beaumont, of course, sort of led
Yep.
the way in that. I think he inspired a lot of people, including me, when I saw him, do his round the world cycle, which is around the same time I did my Land's End John O'Groats cycle. Although I
Yep.
didn't know Mark was doing his at all. I only found out about Mark's one after he had done it.
Yeah.
But I got super excited about that. I was like, whoa. And then I saw, all of a sudden I saw that he was getting opportunities to do other stuff. And I was like, whoa, I mean, what a life Mark is leading. He gets to go, he spends a lot of time being miserable like I do now, and cold and wet and hungry and tired. But it just seemed like on the outside, like such a cool way to spend the short time you have on this planet. And then, but I had no real intentions of that cycle being anything other than a one-off opportunity for me to cycle around the world.
Yeah,
basically.
so obviously there was you wasn't really intending for it to go anywhere from that. It was just sort of a personal sort of achievement for yourself.
Exactly that. Exactly. And in fact, even when I finished, I moved back in with my mum in her one-bedroom flat in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
I went straight to the job centre, signed on, tried to look for work, did the whole thing, went back into real world. I was on, job seekers allowance, just trying to get work in photography jobs, trying to get work in bike shops. Because I'd cycled around the world. I thought, well, I kind of know a thing or two about bikes now. So for like 6 months solid, I was just trying not even getting interviews, but just applying for loads of different jobs around sort of Cheltenham and Gloucester and even London. And there was a couple of bike charities that were national. Tried anything. I was like, I'll move anywhere. Just I need a job. But got nothing. And then after 6 months, my mum was annoyed at having a 31-year-old living on her sofa.
I'm not saying anything right now.
It was annoying for her, So actually, I then thought, well, I managed to sort of get funding to cycle around the world, and my sponsors were super supportive when I got run over in America and that sort of thing. Maybe I could think of another challenge, and then at least that would get me out the house for 6 months. Basically, that's what led me onto the swim, and that's when I thought of the swim.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the accident. Obviously, you were involved in quite a horrendous accident. Really, was it a sleeper? A driver who fell asleep at the wheel? I believe it.
He didn't fall asleep. He was just speeding and on his phone.
Okay.
And to be fair to him, I was cycling on a road you would never in a million years dream of cycling on. But how was I to know? I'm just following a yellow line on a map. It was dark. It was early. He's driven that road his whole life and never seen one cyclist. So why would you expect there to be one at 5:50 on a Thursday morning? Of course.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't hold any grudges to him. He stopped. He called the police and everything. So
No.
I just got unlucky. It's just
Yeah, it's just one
it's,
of them, like you say, you obviously, I believe you got took in by a family and they looked after you very well.
yeah,
About a month ago.
Martin and Missy Carey in
Yeah,
fact.
yeah.
Martin was actually Welsh.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he looked after me, and they nursed me back to health and bought me a new bike and allowed me to carry on cycling around the world, which is amazing.
With I believe, well, with your neck brace and is it a compression fractures in your spine.
Yeah, compression fracture T11, whatever that means.
Yeah.
It also a bit like my cheese rolling shoulder. Whenever those two start hurting, it
Mm.
means I know I need to sort of do a bit more core exercises and go to the gym a bit or do some
Yeah,
push-ups at least.
it's also a good story to tell in the pub, isn't it? Really?
Well, that's all life's about, right? Just
Yeah,
building up
exactly.
pub stories. So
Yeah, exactly. Now, you mentioned just before about your swimming. Um, Now, it's something I, at the time, I'll be honest, I was one of them people who probably thought you're crazy because I've been following you for quite a long time, for quite a number of years, and a lot of people probably said the same thing, didn't they? They were like, "That is not possible. It's never going to happen." And obviously, I think you had a lot of people, a lot of problems trying to convince people that it was possible, didn't you?
yeah, swimming the length of Britain back in so this is 2013.
Yeah.
End of 2012 is when I was sort of toying with the idea,
Hmm.
and I started middle of 2013, which was a year after I finished cycling around the world. Um, so whenever you put a big idea out there, there's actually, for the most part, I truly believe that now you'll get mostly support from people.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, it's easy to sort of go to tell everyone, oh, people said no, I couldn't do it. But actually,
Yeah.
if you look through the comments, there'll be, 95 people said, brilliant, well done, how can I help? And 5 say, no, it's rubbish, you're an idiot. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
easy to go, oh, people said I couldn't do it. Look at these 5 people.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, it's not real. So the swim but the swim, I have to say, was different to that. So yes, there were a lot of people who said, wow, this is awesome. But that's all they said because there's nowhere else they could do anything other than just say, well, this is great. Because no one could give me advice. So it's not like they could say, oh, brilliant, well, I can help you because of this, because of that, because no one really knew how to advise me.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people who were just like, you're an idiot, you can't do it. And then a lot of people, so this was sort of, it wasn't pre-Twitter, Twitter was around, but certainly people were emailing me instead, really, sending me
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
emails about why it couldn't be done. And, they had legitimate concerns. The
Yeah.
weather, the weather's it's too cold, the wind is too strong, the tides are too strong, the
Yeah.
water's freezing, there's big whirlpools, there's, killer whales, all these things. But nothing suggested it wasn't possible. I really did my research, and actually, it was kind of fuel for the fire when hearing all this sort of these naysayers kind of really helped me.
Yeah.
But I think what I wasn't so bothered about people going, there's no way you can do it. It's impossible. You're an idiot. Like that didn't bother me.
No.
What was more frustrating is there were some people who could have given me advice who just kind of said, well, it's wasting my time, so I'm not going to bother. I think it's,
Yeah.
that's cool, but like, and that was just finding out about, tides and currents and water temperature and swimming technique. And yeah, I got some advice here and there, but when I put stuff out on the internet I find, sailing forums, and I'd put a post out about, what's it like? And then, all the good advice would just get buried, and just people going, you're an idiot. It's impossible to sail it in one season. I'm like, no, it's not. I have the sailing record. It's 84 hours. So come on.
Yeah, and see, I normally work with kids in my normal job, sort of before COVID came around, and I always say to kids, like for me personally, I always say to people, um, don't go out there to prove people wrong. I always go out there to prove myself right. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
something you can relate to, but that's something I always say because end of the day, like you say, there's a lot of people who are quite negative, especially nowadays with social media. There's, all it takes is a click of a button. And the problem is, like, hopefully it's a lot of people, well, most people do nowadays is they'll see, like you say 100 comments of positivity. They'll see that 1, 2, 5 comments of negativity, and they'll just
Mm,
concentrate on that five comments.
yeah.
And it's unfortunate that that's the way we are at the moment in this day and age. But as I say, like, obviously you went and did it. It took you 135 days, and that was actually a very important time in your life, because that was when you grew your beard.
Yeah, yeah. The anti-jellyfish protection beard, as I called it back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the
that,
beard just physically stopped my face getting stung from jellyfish.
yeah,
It's
that,
just a
yeah.
physical thing. So yeah,
Yeah, I
but
can't say I've never been stung by a jellyfish. I don't think anyway. Not that I can remember, even as a kid. But
you would remember. Trust me,
yeah,
it's not
I've
pleasant.
been told by a lot of people. Um, Now, obviously, 135 days at sea is quite a long time. Now, obviously, you had a team. Was it well, you and three others, was it? I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Myself and three others. Yeah,
yeah. So,
it's
how did that go? Obviously, because social media was, I won't say new, but it was relatively new. Like, how did you get to, bring people onto you and convince people to come and join you?
I was surprised how easy it was.
Really? Yeah.
I've put a few tweets out. I mean, I think back then I maybe had 500 Twitter followers, maybe, which was,
Yeah.
for me, it was huge. I was like, brilliant,
Mm.
that's great. Put a few tweets out, and a magazine wrote an art. They saw a tweet and then ran a little tiny little advert, not advert, just a bit of an editorial going, oh, and by the way, if you've got next summer off, you want to fancy jumping on a boat with a guy pretending to be a swimmer. Then yeah, just apply here. And actually, I had about 40 applicants.
Oh, really? Wow.
I mean, I jazzed it up. It was like, oh, you want to have an all expenses paid summer vacation on a yacht going up the west coast
Sounds
of
like a
Britain.
Sounds like some it sounds like some sort of like 90s American advert.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, just you just find people who were excited about the idea, who
Yeah.
just I believed would stay with me if the chips went down and wouldn't bail. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, we met a few. I met a few people, and then went on a bit of a team building weekend with the crew just to make sure we all got on
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't ask anyone, which I totally forgot, was, do you suffer from seasickness? Because
Yeah, yeah.
we were we were
I've
all
seen
seasick on
that.
day one.
Yeah, I've been seasick many times. When I was in the military, I sailed around the Caribbean, as you do. Uh, it was something I was luckily able to do. I got to go to some places where you can't even access them by by planes or anything like that. So I was quite fortunate. But as you say, like I thought I'd be all right. I think I'd be all right. I've been on ferries before. I've been Dover to Calais many a time, but it's completely different, isn't it? It's completely different.
I get it swimming even. I get it so bad. It's so
Really,
annoying.
yeah. It's
Because
something you can't help.
my wife and I dream of one day buying a yacht, like selling everything and buying a
Mm,
yacht and sailing around the world. But
yeah, that
yeah,
would be amazing. That would
one day.
definitely be something like you can imagine that's like the dream, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, that'd be great. As long as
Um,
you're not seasick the whole time.
no, I think you get used to it though. Like I was out there for 3 weeks, and not obviously nowhere near as long as yourself, but I got used to it after probably a week or so, maybe the week.
Okay.
You get
Yeah.
used to it. Now, obviously, you did that. Now, do you know Ross Edgley?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about Ross when he did his swim, which technically took
Yeah,
the same route?
yeah, amazing. I mean, I always knew he would do it. Um,
Yeah.
of any people to do a whole lap, he was the guy. He's super strong. He's really on top of his nutrition, which I think
Mm,
is basically it. Really, I think
yeah.
it's an eating based exercise almost.
Yeah.
And when you've got a bit of extra funding, you can get a bigger boat, which means you sleep better and you can anchor quick. You can get into a safe anchorage quicker. And if you with all those and the fact he's just a monster.
He is a monster. He's
he's amazing. So he was always gonna be the guy that if I had to hedge my bets on someone doing it, he was gonna be it really. Because I know Ross for quite a while actually. I met him was just after I'd finished the swim actually.
Yeah.
I might have even been before, to be honest. I can't remember. We did a tough mudder together. You know what? No, weirdly, I was doing my across Europe bike ride at the time, and so I only heard about it once he had started. So he actually didn't ask me for any advice. I gave it to him anyway. I was messaging him. He was like, "Oh, my tongue's falling off because of the salt water." So I'd be like, "Work on your breathing technique, you idiot."
That was something. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. So now the next one thing I want to come on to now is I think when a lot of people started recognizing you, because you were known as the British Forrest Gump, basically. So when you did your run in Britain, so again, you swam, cycled, Land's End, John O'Groats, and obviously you must have thought, well, what else do I need to do now? I might as well run it. There's nothing else to do.
I think anyone with a beard doing anything running based gets called Forrest Gump, to be honest. I think I wasn't the first. I'm probably not going to be the last. The run was great. Running, strangely, there's not many people who've run and cycled Land's End to John O'Groats. Fiona Quinn has walked it and cycled it. And then when I went online, there might have been one or two others, but actually it's a pretty rare club to have just run and cycled. Until if Ross decides to run and cycle it, he'll be the only other person who's done all three. So I'm still the only person to have done all three because no one else has done the swim except for Ross. So, but even just take the swim out of it because that's kind of bonkers, and I don't expect anyone to be doing that anytime soon. Just to do the cycle and the run or a walk is pretty rare, and I think it's such a unique experience, doing the two different disciplines,
Yeah. Well, it actually took you 2 attempts, didn't it? Like you got injured. Is it injured your knee on the first attempt?
Yeah, the first attempt I was taking a selfie, doing a video selfie while running and tripped on a rock, and that didn't injure me immediately. I kind of carried on running on it for another 100 miles, I think. So it would have been another three days, really. It was just, it was enough. I should have, if I just rested for a day, maybe 2 days, I would have been fine. But I carried on running. I then got to Drumnadrochit at Loch Ness and spent 3 days there trying to recover. And then it just was, I just caused not irreparable damage, but damage that would be like 2 or 3 weeks to heal.
Yeah.
So I just had to bail, unfortunately. And then it was winter, so I had to wait out and attempt the following year again.
I think, sometimes, obviously, your brain obviously tells you just to keep going sometimes, but sometimes you have to listen to your body, don't you? And just, and make sure you don't do any, like you say, any future long-term damage. So.
Yeah, and it's quite difficult going from cycling to running. You're just so easy to get injured because cycling, you can kind of go all day and you just might get tired.
Yeah.
And I still had my cycling brain on, and then I just wasn't prepared enough and didn't train enough, really, and it just went to pot, unfortunately. And then sometimes you just got to trust your body and listen to your body, and there's no point in pushing on and having long-term damage, which will affect all your other big ideas.
Yeah, exactly, and you just got to look after yourself, really. Now, whilst you were running, you received, was it a tweet from your good old friend Matt?
Matt Pritchard.
Yeah, Matt Pritchard. Yeah, I obviously most people who don't know Matt Hayes is 1/4 of the members of Dirty Sanchez.
He is.
Again, I follow him on social media.
Yeah.
I find it great how he's now like, I won't say changed his life around, but obviously as people have watched the show, he was a bit of an animal that, you know, they used to do a lot
Yeah.
of things, and now he's completely changed and changed around, and he's really into his health, and he's done quite a few Ironmans and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
Um,
he's got a vegan cookbook. He has a vegan cooking
yeah,
show as well. Dirty
yeah,
Vegan. It's great to see him.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he's got this sort of personality where he burns candles at both end and in the middle,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you know, he was using that energy to mess up his life. He will admit, you know, during the Dirty Sanchez era
yeah,
of just drinking too much and partying too hard. And then he
yeah,
just realized that one day he just needed to shift where he focused that energy, and he just got it focused into triple, double Ironmans, you know.
yeah,
And he's phenomenal. I think he still has the world record for the most half Ironmans done in a
yeah. I was
row.
going to say, yeah, I remember
Yeah,
watching him. I think, yeah, it was, was it? I can't remember. It was a certain amount of half Ironmans you know, consecutively.
yeah,
And
30. He did 30 in a
30,
row,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
went and joined him for one of them
yeah,
in
yeah,
Wales, and I believe that record's still there. I'm not sure. I
yeah.
mean,
I've not seen anything that's, you know, any different, but
yeah, and now he's vegan, and he's got this amazing cooking show, Dirty
yeah,
Vegan,
yeah,
and
it's great.
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, he tweeted me and said, "How can you run Britain and not come through Wales?" I was like,
Yeah,
"Ah,
exactly,
damn
exactly.
it!" So I ended up running 40 miles and having the world's craziest lock-in in a pub, because you can
Yeah,
imagine if you're in Wales and you're a landlord, and Matt
yeah.
Pritchard walks through the pub door, you're like, "Hello,
King.
we're gonna have a good night tonight, ladies and gentlemen." And they were like, "No way, it's Pritchard, right? Right, lock in." So we had a lock in because we only arrived there at like 10 to 11 or whatever at night, and we were going to just have a pint and then sleep in the pub garden, and then he was going to run to Bristol from
Yeah, yeah.
from the Severn Bridge. Um, but the landlord was like, "No, no, 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 have another beer, have another beer, have another beer." Anyway, it was sort of 11, 12, 1, 2. Eventually at 3 o'clock, the landlord's like, "Right, guys, I'm sorry, I better go home. My wife's going to kill me." And we're like, "No worries, it's cool, man. You know, can we just sleep in the garden?" He's like, "No, no, no, no. You guys can sleep in the pub. And here's a piece of paper. Whatever you drink, just write it down, and we'll sort me out in the morning." So we were
Oh,
drinking in this pub until 5:30 in the morning. With the
oh,
landlord had gone home, and me, Pritchard, and another friend of mine, Jez, who was actually one of the first skipper on the swim.
yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
rocked up on his bicycle,
Oh,
and oh yeah, it was carnage. Yeah,
no,
and
I
then we
can
got
imagine.
up, and he was like, "Right, double Southern Comfort. Let's run a marathon." And him and his dog were running with me and Jez on his bicycle. And then we get to the River
Yeah.
Severn, and there's this random French guy. "Sean, how are you doing?" And we're like, "What?" He's like, "I've just hitchhiked. I've just hitchhiked for 4 days from France to come and run with you." I was
Really?
like, "This is amazing." So this
Oh, that's
guy,
crazy.
Julien, who ran with me. So it was me, Julien, Matt, and my mate Jez on his bicycle. Ran a marathon into Bristol that night, and yeah, what a
Wow.
day! What a day!
That's yeah, that's I can honestly say I've done my time in the military doing stuff like that. As in, we used to have what we call CO's PT, commanding officers PT. So on a Friday, we used to do a bit of cross country or a group. It'd be a squadron fitness session, and yeah, you probably get intoxicated just off the fumes in that sort of area at the time. It's it's kind of, I don't know if it happens nowadays, but yeah, it was quite interesting. So I know how you feel. It's not
Yeah.
ideal. Um, so now, obviously, we talked about you've done your swam, Land's End, John O'Groats, cycled and ran. Now, obviously, in April 2016, you went and obviously you decided to do all of them and uh, basically do an ultimate or ultra triathlon. Um, how was that for you?
Yeah, so I enjoyed the different disciplines. So I kind of enjoyed swimming, cycling, and running, and I thought, well, maybe I should try and do them together in some sort of triathlon.
Yeah.
And then found out that there was an actual world record for the longest triathlon. At the time, it
Oh,
was
okay.
3,500 miles, I think.
Hmm.
So I decided to do a 4,200-mile one around the coast of Britain. And yeah, it was 2016, and yeah, it's great. I love the idea of changing disciplines and having a triathlon changeover in a bike shop and then in a hotel for the second changeover. And yeah, and I got to explore the coastline of Britain, which was just amazing.
Yeah, because you started in, was it Lulworth Cove?
Yeah, started in Lulworth Cove, Dorset.
Yeah,
3,500 miles on the bike.
Yeah, it's nice around there. It's really nice.
It's great. Yeah, so went down to Land's End, up the west coast, John O'Groats, down to Scarborough, changed in for the run, ran from Scarborough down, around Norfolk, the Wash, Norfolk, and finished in Brighton eventually, and then swam from Brighton back to Lulworth Cove along the south coast, which up until 2 weeks ago was the longest self-supported swim in history. There's a German guy, Jonas Deichmann, who just broke that record off me a couple of weeks ago. So,
anything to go back and put some more mileage on that, or
no? In fact, I think he's just annoyed with me because I broke his across Europe cycling world record. So he's trying to now break. Yeah. So he's now trying to break my triathlon record.
All right. Well, I was going to say, so with that, obviously you've mentioned it before, and we just brought onto it about your across Europe cycle record. Now, I followed you on that one, and I watched it, and I was like, geez, like you don't have to cover some mileage. As I say, I'm not a cyclist myself, but wow, you cover some mileage in that. Now, was it just over 24 days it took you to cross?
Yeah, 24 days and 18 hours, I think.
Yeah,
it's 4,000 miles, almost bang on. I think it's 15 miles short of that. And yeah, the mileage is hard. It's about 170 something miles a day, which is tough, but it's not crazy difficult. Once you start hitting your 200s, that's when life gets difficult. But saying that, 170 miles a day in Russia is phenomenally difficult. The headwinds, the traffic, the pretty terrible road statistics for road accidents in Russia is scary. I think 40,000 people a year die on Russian roads, and the quality of the road was terrible. So actually, when you add that all in, 170 miles a day becomes quite difficult. So that's what I had to push. And starting in Portugal, heading all the way to the Ural Mountains in Russia, which is where Europe ends. So this side of Russia is Europe, the other side is Asia. The Ural Mountains.
Yeah. So when obviously you would have gone through multiple countries, like how was it with the language barrier?
To be honest, I'm very, very rarely having any meaningful conversations with anyone. I'm living in service stations, so I'm literally queuing up, running into a service station or an off-license equivalent or whatever, grabbing what I can grab, paying for it, getting back on the bike, eating on the bike. Right. Or, if I couldn't eat on the bike, I'm sort of, buying frozen pizzas and sitting them in the sun for 10 minutes while I drink some water so that they sort of unfreeze a little bit, just whatever. And then sleeping in drain pipes under the road because, you're trying to steal minutes. My whole record, I only broke the record by 20 minutes a day on the bike. And 20 minutes is traffic lights if you're cycling through Germany, to be honest.
Exactly.
So you can lose 20 minutes of traffic lights easily. You're trying to steal minutes. So the language barrier didn't matter, actually, to be honest. Most people just kind of ignore a smelly, hairy cyclist, to be fair.
No, so obviously for people who want to sort of follow that, they can actually follow it now on Amazon Prime, can't they? You've got the documentary on there. I'm going to watch that later today, I think.
Yeah, so my mate Kev, who I've just cycled around Snowdonia with for the last week, he was like, mate, if me and my mate Gav, who has a camper van, if we followed you, would you mind if we made a documentary of it? I'm like, yeah, but you really need to know this is a world record attempt. I can't stop and redo stuff and go back down that hill again, and none of that. You really just got to be run and gun, And they were like, it'll be cool. So so they just followed me in a camper van, and I felt really bad. So I'm camping, in a drain pipe, and they were like parked up on the side of the road, and I'm getting up at 3:58 in the morning. So I'd get up, get on my bike, go past the camper van, and be like, boom, 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 wake up, boys, and then I'd cycle off. So yeah, no, it was good. It was great. I love having those sort of visual memories of the adventures I've done, so that my son later can sort of watch me and hopefully be inspired too.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that I think is more important. Like, obviously, you can always remember your memories, but obviously, when we all gone and dead and buried and what have you, then obviously the
Yeah,
only thing we have got is pictures and videos. Especially nowadays with the technology we have, we can always keep
yeah,
a lot longer. Um,
yeah.
Now, with you mentioned your Snowdonia. For people who don't know what that is, the Snowdonia 360. How would you describe that to people who don't know?
So Snowdonia have put together a 360-mile route going around Snowdonia and Anglesey,
Yeah.
and it's a driving route, it's a cycling route. I doubt anyone will walk it, but you could walk it, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like the North Coast 500 in Scotland,
Yep.
but
Yep.
it's around Snowdonia, and it's phenomenal. They only did it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mate Kevin and I were going to be the first people to cycle it, but we missed a bit through
Someone get
my
that for you.
poor route planning on my part. To be fair,
Ah, okay.
when I was doing the route, I followed the driving route instead of the cycling route on their website by mistake. So we got to the
Okay.
end of day 2 and realized we had missed like a 10-mile loop into the mountains, and so,
Ah.
which means it's up for grabs, ladies and gentlemen.
Ah.
So
Well,
there's still that.
I don't think I'll be taking that on anytime soon. I'll be honest with you. I think I prefer the swimming than the cycling. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I pick from the three disciplines. Swimming's my thing.
yeah,
Um, and one thing to mention, you did that actually on an e-bike, didn't you?
I did on an e-bike. Yeah, man, I've been dreaming of trying to do something with Specialized forever. I love
Yeah.
their bikes. I used S-Works shoes when I cycled around the world, and
Yeah.
gloves. My favorite bike is my S-Works Venge, which I custom made. Oh, it's beautiful. You got to trawl through my Instagram and see it. I've got rope handlebars, and it's
Yeah.
brown.
Cool.
It's got leather water bottle cages. I custom built it. But anyway, they said, "Oh, you can loan any one of our bikes," and I sort of
Wow.
had this idea of how can we get more people into bike packing, and I sort of found out that what stops people getting into bike packing, mainly that I found, there's loads of reasons, but the common ones that come up are, I'm not fit enough to do multiple days with a heavy touring bike and get up all the
Yeah.
hills. I don't like camping. That's quite a common one. People don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable camping. Um, and they don't have the time, like the idea of doing bike packing is for them like weeks out of their diary and that sort of thing. And I thought, well, actually, maybe an e-bike would solve that problem. Maybe it would solve that problem. Because you can
Yeah.
get up the hills and you
Yeah.
can do it. You still pedal, you just get there quicker. And you don't have to camp because you have to stay in a hotel to charge your bike at night. So it's sort of opening up bike packing for a different sort of type of cyclist, really. And I have to say, I
Yeah.
was blown away by it. I was blown away by how different it is. Normally when you're bikepacking, every town you go in, you're like, is the next bit hilly? Everyone you meet, you're like, oh, is it hilly between here and there? And
Yeah.
but with an e-bike, you just don't care. And actually,
Yeah.
on the last day, it snowed, and there was this amazing
Yeah.
pass up off to our left, which was off route. And I actually missed it, and then turned around and went back up it. And if
Okay.
you look on my tracking map,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a no-brainer. Like, it was steep and gravelly, which I have to be honest, if I was on a fully laden touring bike, I probably wouldn't have done it because I
Yeah.
don't think I would have got up there, to be fair. But on an
Yeah.
e-bike, you're like, brilliant, I'm going to take the back road that's steep and gnarly. So it kind of
Yeah.
changes. You're all of a sudden doing a more exploration type challenge than a physical one. Am I
Yeah.
going to only do e-bike touring from now on? No, of course not. I love
No.
my
No.
traditional bike
Yeah.
packing, but I just wanted to sort of answer the question
Just try it
that
out.
could you do it? And I think there's a lot of people who would really enjoy e-bike packing. People
Yeah.
who maybe have injuries as well,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
or less abled people. I think
Yeah.
it'd be great. So yeah.
Yeah, but I was going to say, if you'd have done your cross Europe cycle with your e-bike, that wouldn't have been valid though, would it?
No, and actually wouldn't have been much quicker because e-bikes
Oh.
turn off at 15 miles an hour anyway. So
Oh, right. Okay.
yeah, I mean, it would have been quicker, of course, on the hills, but no, of course not. No, there's e-bike sections on Strava nowadays, even.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I've just got a few more things to ask you, mate. Like I said, I don't want to keep you. I know you're a busy man. I don't want to keep you all day.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got to pick up my son in nursery in 5 minutes, so it's all good.
oh, really? No, no worries. I'll just skip through the last few things then. Now, obviously, I'm doing a lot of things with mental health and stuff like that, and obviously, for people who are aware of what you do, a lot of it you do self-supported and by yourself. How does that? How do you keep yourself kind of like positive, and how do you keep going, knowing that you've got really no one kind of with you to talk to or anything like that?
I don't know. I'm quite good at it. I'm quite good at being alone. I quite enjoy it. I think it's maybe hereditary. My dad is a bit of a loner as well, so maybe that's where I get it from. But for me,
Mm.
I'm going for a world record here. This is not me just going out on a jolly or a ride or
Yeah,
going on holiday. I'm trying to become the fastest at something or do the world's first, and that in itself is enough of a carrot at the end of the stick to kind of keep me going when things are tough.
yeah, yeah. Um, so last last question. What's next for you, Mr. Conway?
Well, I was meant to do a big project this year, which has been cancelled, and
Yeah, I
it was
believe
kind
so.
of slightly weather dependent. So it's looking like I maybe have missed next year as well. It was quite a long one, 8 months to 10 months.
Mm.
Um, so I might be 2022 now.
Yeah,
So at the moment, I'm just enjoying being a new dad, to be honest.
yeah, yeah,
I get to, go and pick up my son at nursery now and while my wife's working, which I wouldn't have been able to do had I been away. So
yeah.
at the moment, no immediate plans. Still training, but yeah, working on this big project, which is hopefully end of next year or early 2022 now.
Oh, awesome. Like I said, I'm going to thank you very much for your time, Sean. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to me. Um, for people who want to keep in touch with your travels or your future ventures, etc., where can they find you on?
Probably Instagram's the thing I
Yeah.
use the most. Sean Conway Adventure on Instagram or SeanConway.com. And I noticed you got two of my books behind you there, and
I
they're
have.
actually they're the
They
old
are.
school covers. Yeah,
That's how
that's
long ago I
impressive,
got them.
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
you were in there early. Those are pretty
Yeah. Yeah.
rare nowadays. To find those covers are pretty rare.
Yeah. I don't know how they got there. I think they just there, inside.
I snuck them in there.
Like I said, thanks very much, Sean. I really appreciate it. As I say, I'll put links in the description so you can keep an eye on what you're doing. For people who want to keep on with myself, thank you very much taking the time. And if I don't catch you soon, I'll catch you on the flip side.